What kind of led you to decide on engineering? How'd you get here from your whole life story?
Right. So I feel like when my friends and I were actually talking about this earlier, I will say engineering trauma bonds you,
Hmm.
especially like freshman year, just like those tight connections as it just starts so fast. So we were talking earlier and we're like, I feel like a lot of engineers just have like this innate need to understand like the way the world works.
Yeah,
So definitely felt that growing up a lot.
yeah,
Was super interested in like space and everything with like aerospace and flight and all that. But as you just get down to it, gears, just figuring out the way gears work is interesting. Just figuring out like how a gear train works or a drivetrain works, just stuff like just looking around at the world, always just really fascinated me. So going into high school, I was involved in the Irvine CubeSat program. I'm not quite sure if that's still actually a thing at uni. We both went to the same high school.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Engineil.ing podcast. I'm your host Neil, and today we have a very special guest, Amberley Martinez. Amby, floor is yours. Go ahead, introduce yourself.
Great. My name's Amberley Martinez. I am currently a fourth year at Northeastern University. Just finished up my co-op at Amazon Robotics as a process engineer. Before that, I was also a co-op in manufacturing and mechanical engineering at Parallel Fluidics. So definitely moving through it, having a great time. Currently in summer classes right now. But yeah.
Hey guys, before we get on with the video, I just wanted to remind you to please like and subscribe to the channel. Additionally, you can find all the links to my social medias here in the About section of my page. Thanks!
So, what kind of led you to decide on engineering? How'd you get here from your whole life story?
Right. So I feel like when my friends and I were actually talking about this earlier, I will say engineering trauma bonds you,
Hmm.
especially like freshman year, just like those tight connections as it just starts so fast. So we were talking earlier and we're like, I feel like a lot of engineers just have like this innate need to understand like the way the world works.
Yeah,
So definitely felt that growing up a lot.
yeah,
Was super interested in like space and everything with like aerospace and flight and all that. But as you just get down to it, gears, just figuring out the way gears work is interesting. Just figuring out like how a gear train works or a drivetrain works, just stuff like just looking around at the world, always just really fascinated me. So going into high school, I was involved in the Irvine CubeSat program. I'm not quite sure if that's still actually a thing at uni. We both went to the same high school. I'm not sure if that's still a thing, but it was so cool. It was just this project where all five high schools in Irvine, and then I think one in Tustin as well, uh, were coming together to create a satellite. And I think we were able to launch up to three before the program ended during COVID, just I think lack of funding. But that
yeah,
was just the coolest thing ever, just being able to like have a hands-on thing that went up into
yeah.
actual space and working on propulsion and all these really big aerospace type things and just being like a high school student working on that. That was just so cool.
Yeah,
And then
I
I don't
love
know, did
those
you take
programs.
yeah, it was so cool. And Irvine, such a blessing that we were raised
Yeah,
there.
especially IUSD, they had
Yeah,
just such good funding for programs and things like that. So it really helped you get
exactly. Did you
stuff like,
take Mr. Smay's physics class in high school?
yeah, yeah. I took AP Phys. Yeah, I
Yeah.
only did because at uni they cram physics
Yes.
one, physics two into one year when it's
Mm-hmm.
so. I think I actually dropped at the end of the first semester because I was like, this is way too much. I only plan on taking the test for physics one anyway. So I was like,
Fair
yeah, no,
enough.
can't do it.
No,
But yeah.
that class was formative for me because I was doing absolutely horrendous. I was doing so bad. I was getting C's. I think I ended the first semester with a C and I was like crying because I was like, I'm
Yeah.
not getting into school. Nobody's gonna want an engineer that got a C in AP physics.
Yeah,
And
right.
it is college paced, I will say. You know how like one semester is one part of physics and then the
Yeah,
other semester is physics too. So it was
yeah,
realistic. It was honestly such a good base for me to have in college. I will say,
yeah,
like
right.
I came into Northeastern knowing how to do physics so well just because of that
Yeah.
class and love Mr. Smay. He helped me out as much as I could, but I don't know what it was. So that was like definitely like a early setback, I would say. But again, just like academically, the only thing that I would really say has helped me in industry is just like the problem solving approach.
Yeah.
just being able to, like break it down. Like Mr. Smay always said, like have your givens and your to be determines in like a
Yeah.
little table for like,
Yeah,
they
and
give you
always write
that
them
little
down.
table.
Always
Yep,
write them
yep.
down. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
honestly like
that's
the only thing that I've taken away from it is just even in interviews, I'd pull that out. They're like, how do you approach a problem? And I'm like,
uh
approach it like a physics problem. You have your
yeah.
givens, which in industry, I guess, is like constraints, and your to
Yeah,
be
whatever.
determines is like, your end goal for your product. But
Mhm.
overall, like the academic stress, then not worth it. I will
Yeah.
say.
It was definitely tough at uni, and especially, kind of cramming in those AP courses can be a little tough. But I was
Sure.
actually going to mention like the problem solving that you learn, and I think that's, kind of going back to what you said about a lot of engineers have this innate quality that you want to understand things and you want to look at the world, and when you see stuff, you want to understand it. It's just something that you have innate, some drive that you have. And I think that's really true. And it especially helps in those kind of courses when you get into college or when you get into like senior design, all those kind of stuff. If you have one, that problem solving mindset, and then also that innate desire to understand things, that's definitely a hallmark of a great engineer. And it
Sure.
really helps you in the field because that's how, you're solving problems and first you got to understand, like you said, write down your
Yeah.
givens, to be determines, like you got to understand things first and you got to approach problems with a perspective of like, I want to understand this whole process,
Mhm.
whether it's a drivetrain or a manufacturing line or a rocket, whatever it is. You can't work on it and you can't improve it without understanding everything first. So that's
Right.
definitely
Yeah.
like a hallmark of engineering. And then, like you said, at least for me, the what kind of led me to want to do engineering was also that realization of, hey, I like understanding things, I like figuring things out, I like challenging problems, like you said, and just also like those courses, like even though they're hard, you got
Yeah.
physics, calculus, and all that, like even though they're hard, I did kind of enjoy the grind, and I
Mhm.
knew that engineering was kind of a continuation of that. And so that's usually how I answer, like, yeah, that's what led me to do an engineer. I've had both of those things, like you said.
For sure.
So that's great. Any like specific memories or something you can call back on, like, wow, I know you talked about the satellite project
Mhm.
in high school, but anything that was like, man, if this is what engineering, this is what I want to do, for college, maybe the rest of my life.
I would say just like consistently putting yourself in a good environment with like projects that you're interested in and
Yeah.
definitely like people that you're inspired by, just surrounding yourself with people that are better than you, especially in like, and I would say during my co-ops and everything, like I was always like the worst person in the room. I was never the best. I was always the
Yeah.
least educated. I was always the youngest. Often I was always just like the most clueless. And it comes to a point where you realize like you're just gonna have to be uncomfortable with being like comfortable with being uncomfortable because
Yeah.
you're never gonna be the best.
Yeah.
And if you just like embrace it, like it's honestly just like it's so much fun. It's inspiring.
Yeah.
Specific memories though, probably on co-op, just my manager was helping me out with this project. I had to take over the production of one of Amazon Robotics' first autonomous robots, which was amazing, super cool. So he taught me all like the manufacturing processes, just like basic coding, any of the technical things that I needed to learn. But then he told me probably like 2 or 3 weeks before the build was gonna start, he was going on paternity leave. So I was the main process engineer in charge of this entire robot that
Oh
was
my God.
consistently like not performing. And the
Yeah.
reason was because it was autonomous. And that
Mm.
comes with a whole slew of just cable management issues.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
so many like issues with all of the PCBs because in a lot of Amazon's traditional robots, there's only one PCB, but in the autonomous robot, there's three. So like a lot of tests that weren't being run. So I was just dropped this like really big project.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, like, you gotta get what you're taking, gotta deal with
Yeah. You gotta
how
do
it's
what you can.
felt. But yeah, I think just being in that environment with a really high pressure and really fast pace, like Amazon, you gotta deliver. You gotta deliver
Yeah.
exactly what they want from you, maybe even more. And
Right.
honestly, what I've also learned from Amazon was just like telling the story, know your audience, and just being able to pitch it to them. Everything is
Yeah.
a pitch. Everything is like from interviews to just like making friends to building this robot, you have to pitch exactly how you're going to do it, and you have to convince your audience, whoever it is. They might not have like a lot of technical skills. You have to explain it to them in a way that they're going to understand. And just
Yeah.
like balancing all of that was just such a fun memory. I would say, I would also say that like a lot of mechanical engineering jobs kind of show you the design side, and they don't really show you like the manufacturing side, the production side. I really
Yeah.
think that as an engineer, you should start in manufacturing, or at least like really, really understand how to actually create like a component or a part or all of that before you start going into design. Because
Yeah.
designing for manufacturing and designing for assembly is so important, and you'll get machinists to like you. So
Yeah.
I genuinely think that like starting backwards and learning the entire process backwards from forwards is just like one of the best experiences that I've had.
That's a really great point. I haven't had any like internships or co-ops or anything like
Mhm.
that yet, and nothing on like a manufacturing line. But I will say I had kind of a similar experience in the Formula SAE club at my school.
Oh, nice. You're an SAE. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's really great. I love it. But working with a team has its challenges, and especially with, there's like 150 some odd people in the club. Um, and so, if a junior or sophomore level person where they kind of hand off a project, most of the seniors take on the hard design builds and all that stuff. But, they'll hand off some lower level designs and some lower level builds to like freshmen, sophomores,
Mhm.
maybe even a junior. And you'd run into problems when someone would create a part or design a part and you would be the one to build it.
Mhm.
And it's like just totally unmachinable, or
Yep.
tolerances are so small and it's just within such an insane range that you're like, I can't possibly build this even if I tried
Yep.
20 times, right?
Yep.
So I think definitely, having that, like you said, like that machining experience and kind of
Mhm.
learning from the ground up instead of, a lot of classes take you straight into the design process.
Exactly.
That's definitely a really good like way to ease into it and a way to learn good skills where you can kind of merge into a job easier like that.
For sure.
Um, so talking about your internship and your co-op experience, um, I would say, how was that actual experience? Because obviously you had some expectations going into
Yeah.
it. Everybody does. It's always, what they talk about, what they tell you in school. So how was that actual experience? All the stuff you learned while you were doing it, different from your expectations going into it.
Yeah. So, for my first co-op, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was a startup for my microfluidic devices, I believe, which was like the manufacturing of a bunch of really tiny little like things you put under a microscope, stuff like that. And
Okay.
it required like the most insane amount of detail because we were like dealing with microns here. It was
Okay.
so small, and
Yeah.
it had to be, the tolerances were insane, like less than a thou. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I had never been in the manufacturing environment before, so I didn't have much expectations going in. Probably I had expected maybe a little bit more of, like CAD stuff, a lot of design
Yeah.
stuff. But,
Design,
and
yeah.
then again, touching back on manufacturing, I was operating those machines. I was
Yeah.
learning the processes. I was learning how one type of plastic, like PMMA,
Yeah.
molds differently than COP.
Mhm.
I was learning just like the very basics. And again, I would just love to reiterate that learning that helped me more than anything else, because now I know exactly how to like have the correct radius to work a CNC on a mill, or using the right thing for a lathe. But I know how to design for that now. And I
Yeah.
think
Right.
that I just like really like to reiterate that.
Yeah.
But at Amazon, I was going into the process engineering role. And this isn't as technical, I would say, but it was definitely more hands-on. And I appreciated that a lot. I had no idea that I was going to be on the production floor every single day. Like
Yeah.
I was, yeah. And then sometimes, so Amazon does a thing where they have first shift, and these are the people that are putting together the robot.
Mm.
They're the ones that are, torquing stuff down. They're managing all the cables. They're zip tying things. Um, I was
They're
not one of
turning
those
all the
people.
wrenches. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So they work from 6 a.m. all the way until 3 p.m. And
Okay.
then I worked from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Okay.
And so the first shift would be over. but we might not have met our quota for that day. We're supposed to build 15 robots, we only built 10. I was literally like on the end of the line. I was torquing stuff down. I was
Yeah.
I was managing cables. I was running tests. And honestly, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I had such a
Yeah.
great time. I got to know
That's
the
awesome.
technicians so well. I got to
Hmm.
know a bunch of electrical engineers. I got to like I just was friends with a lot of the maintenance guys. I was friends with like everyone because they're like, "Oh, she's on the floor. She cares. She wants to be here." Like, it's not just another job. It's not just another day. Like everyone just having like the bias for action. That's one of like Amazon's leadership principles. Just making sure that you're always there, you're always, just trying your best. The whole point is to just like, produce good things, to be proud of your work. And everyone at Amazon was proud of to work there. So it just naturally like flowed into the work. And I think just taking ownership and taking pride in that was
Okay.
something that I had no idea I was gonna enjoy that so much. And I didn't
Yeah.
know that my co-op was gonna like give that to me, and I really learned to enjoy that.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, it kind of sounds like you never really know what you're going to get when you go into it. I mean, obviously there's the
Hmm.
job description and what you're supposed to be doing, but yeah, you got to be open to kind of pivoting and just learning what
For
you
sure.
can while you're on the job.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I will say, like, job description, as much as you want to trust it, you're going to be
Yeah.
doing everything. Or at least
Yeah.
honestly, like, put yourself into doing what you do want. You can always like I asked for a Zoom call with a mechie who was designing a test fixture, and I had a Zoom call with him, and I was like, "Hey, I work with this fixture every single day. Here are some issues. Here are some complaints from the technicians that also use it. Can we design one that is, more ergonomic and will produce faster test results?" And then being able to quantify all of the things when you changed the test fixture, like that was more mechanical engineering than process engineering. And as a
Yeah.
mechanical engineer, I wanted that experience. So just being able
Mhm.
to fit yourself into little cracks, always
Yeah,
also,
right.
a great way to
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, it's true. You got to be, and especially when you're, just an intern or a co-op
Yeah.
student, you got to like do whatever you can. It's definitely makes a better impression when they can just hand you things that maybe weren't in the
Hmm.
job description, or it's like, hey, we
Hmm.
need you to stay late. Can really distinguish yourself that way by being open to, just being a jack of all trades and kind of just
Yeah.
fit in
Yeah.
where you can, help wherever you can. And, I think the most important thing is like applying your skills in a meaningful way at the job, and applying what you learn, especially in college. That's why you're there at college. That's why you're doing it in an environment where you can mess up, you can get a
Yeah.
C, so that when you go to that job experience or that internship experience, you totally crush it since you've already done it
Hmm.
before.
For
Yeah,
sure.
learning how to fly. And then, yeah, just being open with like, if you need to be on the floor, if you only made 10 robots and you got to just crank out five more and everybody else is going home,
Gotta do it.
that's super valuable experience for sure.
Yeah.
Um, so that's great. So knowing like what you know now or with the experience you have now, how do you think you would have better prepared yourself for your first internship?
Yeah. I would say again, just putting yourself in a place where you do get hands-on experience is
Uh,
always just the way to go. Like
yeah.
putting yourself in that good environment. The technical skills are going to come with time and exposure, but
Mhm.
there's nothing more that you can really teach in like a group environment. I think just putting yourself like collaborating with your peers, like I'm sure like an SAE, you're working with so many people
Yeah,
to
right.
produce like and put all of your effort into this. You really need to learn how to be a people person. Like as an engineer, I think that's the most valuable skill to have. Like that's going to get you interviews. That's going to get you through second stage interviews. It's going to get you through third stage interviews. It's
Yeah.
just the ability to speak and to communicate and to solve problems with people because you're going to have interpersonal skills and you're going to have interpersonal issues like all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's just what's going to
That's
happen.
just
You're
the
going to
way.
have you know how it is. You have like
Yeah.
engineers like type A personalities. I'm always right, but
Yeah,
sometimes they have
right.
the technical skills to back it up. So you can't really say like, "Hey, let's back down." You have
Yeah,
to
right.
come out them at a very like logical angle and be like,
Yeah,
"Actually, like maybe this way is also good."
yeah, right.
And just being able to manage that, I
Yeah.
think putting myself in more of those situations and again just being uncomfortable would probably have better prepared me for that first co-op and the second one. Again, just like being able to bounce ideas off of people and come together and create ideas is always invaluable, but
Yeah.
doing that in conflict is even more.
Yeah, the interpersonal side, I feel like is something that a lot of people overlook, but a lot of engineers I talk to really, really stress it.
Hmm.
Which I don't know why that happens, but it's just something I noticed that, a
Yeah.
lot of people say, oh, the hardest aspects of engineering is like, senior design or,
Hmm.
those hard classes in your junior,
Yeah.
sophomore year. And really, that's like all the people that I talked to or when I was applying, a lot of the counselors were like, well, you got to be ready for those classes. You got to be ready
Yeah.
to, do this hard engineering stuff.
Hmm.
Um, and a lot of the actual engineers I talk to tell me that that stuff comes with time, like you said, with that
Yep.
hands-on experience, the technical skills come. It's not something that, obviously your classes are important, but that kind of comes with time also when you're working on the job. But those interpersonal skills and being able to manage conflicts and work well in a team is really what was stressed to us, at least in like my freshman year classes and our kind of intro to engineering classes. Like
Yeah.
everything was group projects. There was no like solo project. I mean, we had like one solo project that was a CAD project. Um, but they even encourage you to work in a group. And it's like, I think that what you're saying is really true and it's really something that a lot of people overlook, those interpersonal skills and ability to work in a team and apply your skills in a team effectively
Hmm.
is really important in the engineering discipline.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
great. So, obviously this is, your fourth year and you've had some experiences, some internship experience. So where do you see yourself after you graduate or, where are you planning in your life to kind of go ahead after you graduate?
Yeah. So I was inclined back at Amazon. They do a thing where they are dependent on like the economy for actually offering you an internship again. So I was actually interested in returning, maybe in a different role, but maybe not. I did appreciate the corporate structure there because my previous co-op was a startup. And then Amazon was on the exact opposite end of the
Yeah,
spectrum.
right. It's like
Um,
total opposite.
exactly, exactly. Which honestly, great. Like that was fantastic for me. I
Yeah.
needed to see both sides. I think post grad probably either somewhere in the middle or closer to corporate, just to start out for the
Okay.
like the beginning of my career, and then honestly, the just freedom that you get out of startup is so unmatched.
Yeah.
I would probably definitely lean toward going there, maybe towards the middle of my career, but definitely still open. I'm looking actually to get a minor in robotics. So
Wow.
Amazon is calling my name. I just
Yeah.
really love like the human machine interaction component of that too. I think that's something, especially with AI, I
Yeah,
think
right.
that it's just gonna be so, so important.
Yeah.
Especially just like it's growing exponentially. And it's such an important tool, also a little dangerous, but I
Yeah,
think that integration and we're mechies, like electromechanical integration is one of the most important parts of our job.
for sure.
And being able to figure that out, I think, is just probably one of the more things that I'm very interested in pursuing post grad.
Yeah. Okay,
Also, yeah, so we'll see.
that's cool. Well, I want to go back to one thing you said there when you were
Hmm.
talking about just kind of the difference between Amazon and your startup, how, they're
Yeah,
at two different extremes
genuinely.
right there, right? So you said you had a little more freedom in the
Hmm.
startup. Can you like elaborate on that? Exactly did you mean by like freedom in the startup as opposed to Amazon?
Right. So, I know you'll see this at a lot of corporate jobs. Um, you have to go through so many engineering change orders just to change one little part.
Oh,
And
okay.
you have to get a lot of approval from a
Hmm.
whole variety of engineers. I had friends on the hardware mechanical engineering design team that they worked for months on one part, and it was like a stand for a computer, and they worked for months on that, and they had to go through engineering change orders that took another 2 months, and it went until the end of their co-op. They don't know if their part got made because they
Yeah.
had to get approval that took 2 months to go through. So, and I'm sure like you're gonna get a lot of people that work in corporate to say the same thing. You just
Yeah.
have to get so much approval.
Okay.
As opposed to, the startup, you could take out a drill a hole, do whatever you want. You could, mess with the injection molder. You could
Yeah.
change settings on the CNC machine just to see what it would do. Obviously with all the correct safety, everything. But
Yeah, right. Of course. Yeah.
overall, like you have the ability to experiment, and I will say this again and again, hands-on experimenting, hands-on experience is just like the best way to learn. And I think that freedom was amazing. Again, if you don't really have like a solid baseline, like that was my first internship. I didn't have like a solid corporate baseline. I didn't have just like a lot of that stuff that you learn as an engineer in corporate world or even in just like a bigger company.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know how to apply that freedom that I had. So I think that gaining more experience in the field and in industry, and then being able to go back to that freedom with my really solid like baseline knowledge would
Yeah,
be very, very
that
helpful.
would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I didn't realize. Yeah, I haven't heard that before, that, most of us, at least like students in my position, going into
Mhm.
sophomore year, going into junior year, you're trying to get that first internship,
Right.
pretty much just grabbing whatever we can, right?
Yeah.
Anybody that comes back to us is like, thank you, like, applying to 100 internships, whatever.
Oh yeah.
So definitely wouldn't use it as like a criteria, because usually you only get one anyway. But it's interesting
Mhm.
that just to know going into it, like if you're going into a startup versus a big company like Amazon, that experience is going to differ pretty drastically like that.
Yeah.
Kind of in a big company, you got to go up the corporate chain of command and you got to get all
Hmm.
these approvals, like you said, versus in a startup, you can kind of just drill the hole and put it in right there, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that they kind of, or I hadn't thought about it, that they would differ like that a lot. Um,
Yeah. And again, I'm on both ends of the spectrum, so it was very extreme for me, but
yeah.
you'll
Yeah.
probably see that like as like a pattern or a trend among everyone that
Mhm.
you're talking to. But yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, so, kind of wrapping up here, but I
Hmm.
like to end with a question, because audience can be, people in high school not knowing if
Yeah.
they want to apply to engineering or not. So what would you, with all your experience now, your fourth year, kind of near the end of your engineering academic career, right? What would
Hmm.
you tell your younger self, your 16-year-old self, 17-year-old self, kind of coming out of high school, maybe applying to engineering, maybe not? What would you tell yourself to kind of better prepare yourself for the path you find yourself on now?
Yeah. I would say don't postpone yourself. Like continue pursuing everything, even if you're absolutely scared out of your mind and terrified. Because I was not sure I wanted to do engineering. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna go for it. And I'm gonna continue to learn. Gonna continue to be curious. And what really helped me was making sure that I wouldn't let my school or academic performance kind of beat it out of me. I was really disheartened by that C in, high school physics.
Yeah.
That really almost changed my mind.
Yeah.
But I honestly would say, like, don't let that performance like beat it out of you. Just keep learning, keep being curious, just continuously ask questions. And just don't put it off because you're gonna regret it. Don't put off like doing the hard thing. Don't convince yourself not to because it's not worth it. It's so, so much fun to just put yourself in really hard situations or you're going to fail a lot. And that's what engineering is. And
Yeah.
I would say to just love failing because I've learned to love it. And I will
Yeah.
say also, one of the best things that I've learned from my coworkers is to be able to explain back to people what they say in a really concise way. And I want to say that you do a fantastic job of that. Like all of the engineers that I've worked with have been able to do what you do, and you're doing it really well at a really young
Thank you.
age. So I'm honestly like very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. One of the best, well, I have two things. Like you said, learning how to fail,
Hmm.
and learning how to be okay with that is really important. And Steve Jobs had a really great quote, and it was very, very simple. It's literally says, fail faster.
Yep.
So I totally agree with what you say. Failing, that's how you learn, and getting used to that, getting used to prototyping or designing, prototyping
Hmm.
doesn't work. Prototype again doesn't
Do it
work. You do that
again.
five
Yep.
more times, and then you finally get it to work.
Right.
It's never going to come out perfectly on the first try.
Yep.
So that's awesome. And then, like you said, yeah, I get this great. I don't know where it comes from, but my dad has told it to me. When you're explaining things to people, is to tell them what you
Tell them
told
what you're
them,
gonna tell. Yep.
and
Yep.
then tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
My dad said
That's
the same thing.
advice that you can apply to your whole life.
Yep.
That's really good advice. Well, thanks so much for your time, Andy. It was
Of
really great
course.
having you on the show.
Great. Thank you so much, and good luck with everything. If you don't
Thank
get an
you.
internship, that is the world against you. You deserve it.
Thank you very much.